Here's a view of Lusk that you haven't seen now before, nor have I either. Until I can afford myself a helicopter, I'm not going to see it like this again. Lusk is a great little town. Some people might think that it's a bulge on the road between Dublin and Skerries. But no, it's history alive, in fact. We've recorded an awful lot of material about Lusk of St. Patrick and the Lusk of Cuchulainn and the Lusk around Brian Brew's time, through revolutions and wars and peace. But another little detail, when you look down on those streets below us, you could wonder what sort of characters would you meet on those street corners within living memory. I'm not talking about a very short living memory, but over a long lifetime, the people that you might bump into down there at the corner, we'll say, of the Post Office Road or of the Quickpenny Road or somewhere like that. We were lucky enough to stumble across an archive written by one of our own sons in this here village, Mr. Joe Dennis, who's busy heading up on the home run towards his 100th birthday, and he took the precaution of writing down the things that might be forgotten. He has memorized the names of the people who lived in the houses, and he has painted little profiles of some of the weird and wonderful characters that populated this village during his lifetime. Here we are in the middle, the centre, the epicenter of this village, which is of course not the town hall, but Murray's Top Shop. It has been the centre of this little town for quite a long time. And we're here for the very reason of feting this man, Joe Dennis, who has written this wonderful little archive. We want to get Joe to say a few words himself and to tell us where the idea came from.
Coming home from a golfing outing one time, we sat in the restaurant having a cup of tea, and we started naming the old folks in Lusk. And they all had nicknames, so I was able to name them, and they wanted me to write a book about it. So I said, no way. So when I went home, I got a pen and paper and I started writing them out, and I found a lot of them. So I continued with it. So the next day I sat down and I started off on the book. It took me a few months to do it, but I got it finished. And all the great characters we had and the great nicknames they had, and how they had to earn a shilling. They had to go near and far to earn a shilling. There was no such thing as dole that time. You got no dole. There was such a thing as the home assistants, and you had to be out of work for 2 weeks before you got that. And the third week you got 3 and 6pence. And if you'd done an hour's work in that, you lost your 3 and 6pence. Now I know men that, one man in particular, he walked from the railway station in Lusk to Hollywood Quarry, and that was a distance of about 3 miles. And he walked every morning, hail, rain or snow, for years, to the quarry at Hollywood Quarry, and worked for 8 hours out, a can of tea, maybe a dry sandwiches, and then walk home that evening, 6 o'clock. And he done that for years. Men cycled near and far for a day's work, and work was very scarce that time, and so was money. And they talk about hard times now. Hard times, they don't want to be living back then, for the hard times then was very severe.
Listen, thank you very much for all coming along this evening, all the Dennises and Joe and Mrs. Russell and all of Joe's neighbours and friends and family. It's lovely to have you all here. This is a very proud moment for us and for Joe and the family, because 15 years ago Joe did this book on Lusk, and he put a lot of work into it. And I know the proceeds all went to charity, which is to your credit, Joe. And we hope we have a very nice evening this evening. And now hand you over to Jim Monks. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Pat. We were just chatting here about the way change takes place in this village, and I suppose every village. Change is all around us. It happens gradually. And you could say nothing really happens, but Take 10 years, and quite a bit has happened. The big things get recorded. The wars, the political upheavals, the religious events. That's all written down and it's recorded in archives. But the little things. Who lived in the house down at the corner of the Barrack Lane, or what name was over this pub before it was Murray's pub? Loads of little things like that that would slip away, that'd be forgotten. People remember, all right, but memories fade, and people move away, and people pass away, and things get lost, unless somebody writes it down. When it's written down, it's preserved. And we're here tonight. It brings me, I suppose, to the reason why we're here tonight. The reason being that recently we came up with a little bit of treasure. And that little bit of treasure is the book that Joe Dennis has written. Joe is a Lusk man. In addition to being a Lusk man, Joe is 94 years a Lusk man. And he wasn't just your average, ordinary Lusk man. He took a lively interest in his surroundings. He was a man for his parish, man for his sport, man for his politics. A great little Lusk man, and by the same token, a great little Irishman. This book is what brings us here tonight. I want to talk about that book. I want to talk about Joe Dennis. The first person I want to speak to tonight is Mr. Tommy Dennis here beside me. What about his sport? I believe he was a great
He was
sportsman.
very good, yeah. He was into the boxing and the football and the hurling and that, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Never practiced the boxing on you when you were coming in late some Saturday night.
Oh, we often did, yeah, we often. And he had us at it too, but we never took it up.
Great
We were
stuff.
more interested in work.
That's a terrible thing. That should be
isn't it?
stamped
Yeah,
out.
that was
Certainly
the
should.
downfall of us.
Oh, there's no getting
The
away
work.
from that at all. But apart from that, I think you're carrying on a bit of that tradition. You have a memory for things that have happened.
Well, you have a memory,
as well.
yeah. Well, as you said, what was on the name on this place before it became
Yes.
a top shop? Like it was
Absolutely.
Emily Carton, you know what I mean?
Right
So-
enough. And that's how it goes.
Like-
These are the things that can be forgotten. You could stop somebody outside in the street and they'd have no idea.
You could go
Of that.
up to the Green, you had Biddy Moore,
Yes,
you had Mary Donnelly,
that's right.
and then you had a printing office there where Barney Carl was.
That's
Well,
it.
next door to
Yeah.
Valerie Bentley, the printing Joe Kelly,
I
T.G.
see.
McAvoy.
Yes.
Then
Some of
next
these
door then you
recorded in
had
the book.
Nan McGrath, Kip Rogan.
Yes.
In and sit down, and we thought he was a great character. We'd have a laugh, and we sat on our two corner box
Yeah.
in the corner. We'd sit there, and we ordered a load of sweets.
Good man.
And eventually, then we said we'd put them on the slate.
Yes.
We didn't really know what the slate was, but we chanced our arm.
Yes.
So we had a bit of a laugh then, and he says, as he folded the arms and he looked at us and he said, "Me goods are good, me price is just, and I'm sorry, friend, I cannot trust. I trusted many and to my sorrow, so pay today because there's no tomorrow." And I thought it was very good.
It was very good.
And there was only two of us that really
Yes.
learned that from him, you know,
Right,
because he
enough.
was a great workman, businessman, that
Yeah.
he was into everything, you know, so we always kept thinking of Kip Rogan with
Yes.
that poem, you know. We never gave it to nobody.
No, well, now it's recorded.
Now
You
it's
have it down. It's
recorded.
here for posterity.
We always said we would try and give it to somebody,
Yes.
and don't let it go to the grave with us, you know. So
Well, no, that should never be allowed
No,
to happen. There's no
but-
getting away from that. Listen, thanks very much, Tommy. A certain part of this village that has changed an awful lot is the square.
Yeah.
And a funny thing to call a triangle a square, but still, we do that sort of thing in Lusk. I mean, there's no post office in the post office road. But we have a couple of residents of the square here just at the moment, and just a quick word with them. Brilliant, Sweetman. At this stage, can you remember a little bit about the square as it was when you were growing up? I don't believe there's a house in it.
Oh, well, not as they were then.
No.
No, they're all renovated. But I remember a lot about the square when I was growing up. Mainly the way it was, not the way it is now. That job they did down there, I think, is abominable. But anyway, but they were
Change
nearly
of
all
head.
whitewashed, thatched houses, you know.
Yes. Were there many? Were there
There
many?
were a good few, yeah. There was Right around the square, like where our old house and shop was.
Yeah.
It was thatched. Donnelly's next door, which was the corner of the sale yard, that was a 2-story thatched.
Yes.
Ca Connor, which is May Boylan's now, Lord have mercy on her, that was thatched. And Kiernan's, which is Eileen Devine's now, that
Yes.
was thatched. Dick Fleming's shop was thatched. All of them were, and right down from where Hans Supermarket originally started,
Yes.
there were 3 or 4 thatched whitewashed cottages along there. Kiernan's and Mammy Knott and Katie
Yes.
Ainger. They were all,
They're the old Lusk names.
yeah.
But certainly if somebody walked back after 80 years,
Yeah.
would they recognise an inch of the square?
Not really, I
Just,
wouldn't think so, no. It's completely
Apart from
different.
the pump.
Exactly.
Yes.
Which I'm glad to see that is still there.
It's still there and in the one piece.
Yeah.
We have a representative from Carduff here. We're a bit short of owlads. That's a bit of a problem, I notice. We need a good few of them round these
We've
days.
an owl here.
He's looking good on it, all right.
Jim, I had no idea what Jim was going to ask me, and I have to salute Joe. God bless you, Joe. You're a credit to the parish, and you didn't just stick in your book into Lusk. You did stray over in Carduff as well. And I have an odd little memory actually of Joe. It must have been hard to. I know he had that great political connection, and he would have been out every electioneering, so he knew pretty well every house in the parish. But about 30 years ago, I was building my house, and a lot of people at that stage, there was a lot of new houses, and it must have been hard to keep up with all the new houses. This isn't answering your question now, Jim, I know, but I know, I always remember after I'd built my house, which was just across the hedge from the home place. I'd sort of moved northwards towards Balbriggan, and so it was a new house, and there was an election. I can't remember, I've no idea who was being elected, but the Bowl Joe was out electioneering with somebody, and the doorbell rang, and people didn't normally go over and do too much in Carduff. They were too scattered, and I suppose you could get round a lot more people in a tighter area. But anyway, when I opened the door, it was the Bowl Joe with whoever he was promoting for Fianna Fáil at the time. And I would have been sort of, as a family, not associated with Fianna Fáil, let's say. I hadn't any strong affiliations, but if they were marking me down, I wouldn't have been marked down as Fianna Fáil. And I opened the door, and there was Joe, and he looked at me and he said, Aidan, if I realised it was your house, I wouldn't have bothered coming. So it must have been hard to keep. But all those houses, I mean, we had some lovely thatched houses. There was Kiley's and there's Finnegan's and with Cartons the far end, and thank God they're still there. And in many ways, Carduff hasn't changed that much. It was lovely to see in Joe's book the names of some of the people, remembering Maguire's and Yella Mick, and he was wandering up towards Ballocklin with them. But in many, of course there was a lot of nicknames. Honestly, I wrote a little book a long time ago too, and I have a long list of these nicknames in it, but I can't even remember them just for the minute, Jim. But I think, although we changed both in Carduff and in Lusk, I don't think we really changed. I think we always kept a sort of a pride in our village. And it was a credit to people like Joe, and in fairness to people like Pat Kelly as well, who persecuted us into making sure the place was cleaned up and all this type of thing. And it was people that made the village what it was. And it's a funny thing, everyone has different memories. And Joe remembers and has written down all them wonderful little stories. Ask somebody else and they'll have a long list of a whole heap of other stories, And one of them people that Joe mentioned was the old shop, which was McCusker's, was it? But then Billy Clusky, was it? Anyway, in my day it was Maguire's shop, and eventually my sister finished up with it. But the Maguires were again, they were sort of characters, but they were contrary. One of them was a contrary old devil, and the other one was very nice. And you'd always sort of hope you'd get the nice one when you go into the shop, because if you got the other one, she'd eat the face off you, you know. And gradually, as she got older, she got very deaf. So eventually, she got a hearing aid. The problem was the hearing aids in those days, they were worked on batteries, and the batteries went flat. So most of the time, even with the hearing aid, she could hear nothing. And I remember the shop used to stay open till 9 o'clock at night. And at about 8:45 every night, my uncle Paddy White from Balloch, used to arrive in for a sliced pan and 6 bananas to make sandwiches for the kids going to school the next day. And he'd know that Lal Maguire was deaf. So he'd come in and he'd let us shout. He'd say, "I want a sliced pan and 6 bananas." And Lal would say, "What do you want?" So this was fine until one day Lal was after getting new batteries and she could hear a pin drop this day. And Paddy, as usual, came in and he lets the roar at her, "I want a sliced pan and 6 bananas." And she shouts that back at him, "There's no need to shout, I'm not deaf." So I'm just saying, everyone has different memories, and I think it's great that Joe put down his memories, because they'll jog a lot of memories for a lot of other people too.
There's a Gersha over here on my left. I'm just wondering, Nina, would you remember a few of those characters that knocked around the village?
I can remember Dick Hunt and all the different fellas that used to work for Daddy. The Dennises worked for him.
Yes.
And we had great memories of them all coming in. We were the first one to have a television in Lusk. And of course, everyone would arrive in. They'd have a bag of sweets, and Daddy'd be looking a sweet nearly from every one, you know. And they'd be sitting on the floor up on chairs or wherever it was. But Joe was always one of them. And a lot of the Dennises. And then as he got older, of course, he'd be working, and if they were looking someone for work on a Sunday, I'd be sent up to get the Dennises, and they'd be all down for work on a Sunday. And of course there's a song mentioned about my father, Jimmy Rogan, and he's mentioned in it. And then I can remember him boxing in the library. And of course at the football and the hurling, he was absolutely brilliant. We'd all want to see the Dennises, and of course the Kellys out playing for Towers when Towers were really good then.
Yes.
And then, of course, of later years, Joe has been very good with, when I was doing the project for Balrudder Union, he could tell me a lot about it because they lived over there for a time. And of course, he was always a true Fianna Fáil one. He was president for a number of years, and we had lots of chats and walking about with Ray Burke and all the rest, and Joe would be out in front with Ray Burke. So I've got lots of good memories of him.
There's somebody that I'm going to call on for a few wee words now at this stage. A particularly important person, and this person has been very important in the compiling of this book, because we all have with the best will in the world, I could write something down and nobody would want to read it. I think somebody with a little bit of a way of helping words onto the page. I just wonder, could we have a couple of words from Joe's wife, Una, at this stage? What's it like to live with such a lively historical mind?
All I can say is that I have no regrets about having come across the city to live in Lusk. I have been made welcome, especially by Joe's family, and they couldn't have done half enough for me. And at times they must have wondered what that one was doing. But that's something that I will always be so proud of having known him. He's a wonderful person, as you all know, over the years. Sometimes he's just a little bit quick for me. He decides that he's going to do something in the garden, and he's out and in the garden and the thing is done. And Thomas, who tries to get there before him, doesn't always succeed, even at 94. But I just would say that it was a very special 22 years that I have spent in Lusk. I'm not a great one for the limelight, and I tend to be kind of quiet and in the background. But I just would like to be part of this evening, and he is great.
Hear to that.
I'm very happy to be here tonight, and I thank everybody that has come along here to listen to all the gossip about me. But there's lots of things in my memory that I have all down the years. And something about, way back at a long number of years ago, I started a boys' club. And in that boys' club we had great young fellas, and I have great praise for them. And it made gentlemen out of a whole lot of them. And from that I organised three football teams: a juvenile football team, under 16 and a half, and a minor. And we won a few competitions, and most of those players graduated into the present junior team that won the Dublin Junior Championship in the 90s. So I always felt very proud in all those footballers. Unfortunately, the club lost some of those good footballers. Now, and I would say good footballers. There were 7 of them: the priesthood, the doctors, and the teaching, and emigration, and then in that, we lost 7 good footballers. And in those years of the minor team, we brought home 3 All-Ireland medals to Lusk. And 3 of our minors won All-Ireland medals. And I was very proud of them that day, playing. And they played a big part in winning the Leinster Championship and the minor championship, All-Ireland. They played great football. They were good footballers. And so I haven't much more to say in that. So then when I got too old then to manage them, then I handed it back to the committee. I'd done a lot of other work besides that. I run bingo and Lusk for the GAA club for years. I formed the senior citizens thing. That was the first thing I organised. I had the first old age pensioners meal was we had 19 present for the first meal, and we had that in the old school. The following year we got more, and we had to get a bigger premises when we went to the library. And the following year the numbers increased, and we had to go to the hotel in Skerries. So it got that big. So now they're still thriving, and every year now they have an outing, and they're doing very well. And I'm very proud to be one of the members to say that I done so well over the years. And that's all I can think of to say.
As I said earlier, a great little Irishman. And when I see the crowd around here tonight, when I see the people of Lusk, the Lusk people, past and present, that are here, and it's a kind of a reinforcement of the feeling that we have for him, and what he has done for us is very important as well. The written word will always be there, and Joe has done it. All I can say is, well done, Joe Dennis, and thank you all very much.